It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, April 10th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that, given that loss in Montreal, all that's left to say is safe and neat.
Yep, it was a car crash.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can find us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network every day. Russ, I don't know, man. You want to ask the question, was this the ugliest game of the year? Winless in 8 games, the timing of it being horrific. Is it the worst game of the year?
No, I still think the Columbus one was, because I think there might have been some hope still from some people in that one. You know, it wasn't me, but I just feel like that one, hope was dwindling even before this game started. It was more of a Hail Mary kind of feeling. So I honestly, I don't think it was the worst one from that perspective, because honestly, look, I was on Sirius XM today. We talked about the Flyers. I called them dead, and I did it for a reason. It's because we've been chronicling, watching the wheels come off, the gas tank run out, and it's just a function of that.
Yeah, let's talk about that in particular, because that's been sort of this existential question in this losing streak, right? We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show as well, or maybe it was the day before. Again, time is a flat circle. But asking the question, did they run out of gas, or was this team kind of a fraud to begin with, or like what's going on here? And I think that no, this team was not a fraud to begin with. This team has some good players, and they were producing good results. I think that it was a combination of getting gassed and being so amped up for that quote unquote gauntlet of games that they just ran out by
Yeah,
the time it came to those games coming afterwards. And then you lose confidence, and that kind of dovetails to like losses like this, like we had against Montreal.
yeah, I think a lot of that's true. I think look, I think at this point, even a week ago, they should have just let Adder and Jennings do their thing. They'd be so much better off than all the different consternations they've had with the older guys thrown in there. Those guys, they're done. They don't need to play anymore. They shouldn't play anymore. The coach doesn't owe them anything. The organization doesn't owe them anything. What's important is, what are you going to do? How are you building this team for Mitch Cup? And the coach has to be on board with that now. Like, the coach has to look at this and say, okay, the season's over. Listen, he only needs 3 games to teach these kids. He could have been teaching them a lot longer, but that didn't happen because there was the excuse they were in the playoffs. Okay, well, there's no more excuses. So now put Lixell on the second line and give him 15 minutes a game. Ease the burden on some of these other players, because it doesn't matter. Let Adder and
Right.
Schinning play the third pair and give them more minutes in some of these games so they can get used to NHL. You got to do all that, and they've been still fighting it, and the coach has been fighting it. And I'm telling you, that's going to be a big discussion when the season ends, because they're probably not getting this far next year. You look at all the different things they have to do, it doesn't even make sense to point in that direction. So that's where they have to sort of, we felt like there was this divergence in the organization as far as
Yeah.
doing this true rebuild, and well, we can't because we're winning. Well, now you're not winning. So now there's no more excuses.
Right. And I think it's hard because you want to say, okay, now we're just going to turn and focus on the rebuild entirely, but it's too late for that for this season. And and to the point, that you made and we've been making for a while now that you got to play the kids, right? You got to give the prospects some more opportunities than they're getting, not just the ones that are currently up, but also there's a couple guys, well, more like one, maybe two guys in Lehigh Valley
Yeah,
that
they
you
can't give
wanted
them
to.
opportunities because there's no more call ups.
Right. Right. But yeah, there's no opportunities there. And I think that, you know, th- in addition to, a lack of confidence here from the team overall, you're getting, young guys that you needed to get experience and evaluate at the NHL level that you're really not getting a true picture of. Even with Adern and Ginning, who have been rotating in, I think that it's not enough and it's not enough
Right.
consistent action to see what they look like over a stretch of games. The other side effect here that I think, I would suppose that you would agree with, Russ, is that it doesn't show a guy like Massimo Rizzo that this is a team that's going to give your prospects opportunities.
Right.
And should he sign here?
Right. I mean, that's a big factor. I mean, that is something that goes through the heads of every one of these free agents. And the Flyers have signed some guys, and they're not stars, folks. I mean, they're just
No.
not. So a guy like Rizzo, who has a chance to maybe be a second liner in this league, you gotta you gotta make sure that you roll out the carpet for him. And even if you get the coach to talk to him and say what his plans for him are going to be, because if the coach can't say that, then you don't have the right coach anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's really the danger in what we've been talking about with Tortorella and his lineup choices. I think that, you could look at the style of play coaching, you could look at, the lack of a power play system and look at all those things. And I think that's a separate issue from the lineup
It
questions
is.
and
No, it's a separate issue.
from the opportunity, because I think strategies can be rethought and fixed, but a philosophy about how you play guys and ice time and what that is less likely to change.
Right.
Possible, but less likely.
Right. I mean, again, I remember at the beginning of the year when everybody was wondering what kind of team it was, I said they definitely had enough talent to have a decent power play. I'm not talking about top 10 in the league. I'm just talking about something respectable. And if they were close to being a playoff team, they certainly had that. And they didn't. It got run into the ground again. And so, yes, that is a separate issue. We know that's going to get dealt with. But should it have been dealt with earlier? Yeah, probably. Why it hasn't? No idea. And people have pointed out that when Rocky Thompson had the power play before in other places, it wasn't great, but that's fine. I didn't dig into that because I don't know if he was in charge of the power play or he was the coach. You know what I mean? I only
Right.
looked at what I've looked at here. But as far as, yes, coaching philosophy now, it has to change. It can't be just relying on your vets. It can't be, oh, you make a mistake in practice, you're out now. It can't be any of that. Mistakes have to be allowed. And if this coach can't allow them, like that's just not in his nature, then he's got to take another job in the organization. Like he has to decide that because and I'm sure they're going to take some time after the season, let them cool off, whatever, and they'll have this discussion, in a month. But the idea is they have to have it quickly. You can't let it linger because you have to have an idea. The draft doesn't have anything to do with the coach, but what you were talking about, guys like Rizzo, players that are still out there, you do have to have a strategy about, and that's where you have to almost ask the coach, hey, if we get this player, are you going to play him? What are your plans for next year? So the coach has to give you a plan for next year pretty soon.
Right. Right. I think, just one detail about the power play, as it relates to the Montreal game specifically, that I just want to touch on is I know these goals weren't worth much in this game that the Flyers got. However, two of them were net front. And I thought that those plays on both of those goals were really good. One of them was a little garbagey, and the other
Mhm.
one was more of a set play.
Mhm.
with a pass from behind the net out front to
Mhm.
another guy goes in, right? And especially, it was the Farabee goal with Cates and Lixell.
Right, no,
I
that
thought
was
that,
a good goal in any game,
yeah,
I feel.
and I just wanna point out again that, that's something else we've been talking about is the lack of a solid net front presence because it works. It
Right,
does work, and there were some prime examples of that in this game. If they could focus on those kind of plays a little bit more, that gets them goals and gets the confidence going. Because then maybe their shots can build off of that, right?
right. Yeah, no question. I mean, and look, they played a Canadian team that just lost Jack-Eye, a major physical force.
Mhm.
Didn't even matter. Wouldn't
Nope,
even matter. So, yeah,
not
you're
at
right.
all.
Those kinds of things do matter, and the will to do them all season long is not easy. Listen, there have been a lot of guys in the NHL that you always say should go net front. They'll tell you they should go net front, and they just don't do it. Whether and a lot of times it is not a conscious thing. Players have to want that
Yep,
deep
absolutely.
down
Are
inside.
Yeah, there's so much more to talk about here just at a high level, and want to talk a little bit more about the blue line in this game and what it's been indicative of from a pattern perspective. We'll do all of that coming up next.
When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you could attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching assessments and virtual interviews. And hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. With Indeed, matching as soon as you sponsor matching as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Boom. It's hiring at warp speed. And now with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that meet your hiring criteria. Visit Indeed.com/locked on to start hiring now. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Are you watching sports on cable TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the yelling? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program just for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On tomorrow's show, we will talk about Flyers versus Rangers. Plus, we're going to check in on our weekly draft eligible prospect profile. This time, Berkeley Catton of the Spokane Chiefs in the WHL. Talking about the blue line a little bit from the Montreal game and how it kind of fits into the picture of what this season has been. We talked about getting Addard and Jennings in as far as ice time goes, but I think like that Sealer Drysdale pairing was looking pretty rough, and it seems pretty
Yeah,
clear that neither one of them are at 100%. And that kind of makes the not having the other guys in issue a little bit more prominent, right?
it does. I mean, I looked at like play where Gallagher just gets into the crease. Sealer does a flyby. He goes right next to him. He knows he's there, and he leaves him. He's like, what's going to happen? Well, Brendan Gallagher around the net has made a living for a
Right.
while now. And so, yeah, you saw what happened. Uh, Speed is not there for some of those guys. Just the uh, keeping up with players. I mean, let Slavkovsky get to the crease. Now, again, he's harder guy to hold back, but they didn't like
Right.
cover him. They didn't like say look out for him on the ice. They didn't. I didn't see any pointing. I didn't see any extra attention or detail where he was, and he's been good for 2 months now. Like everybody knows it. So again, whatever is being said as far as in the film room or whatever, when the legs have to get going, the legs just don't have it.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of miscoverage, especially, weak side, net front.
Yeah.
They were just missing assignments pretty consistently in this game, and you can say that's, because they were gassed, but I think that's also a lack of concentration, and I think that, when you're exhausted, concentration goes too, and I think that was a part of it.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. That's part of it with the goaltending. I think it's important. Here's an important thing to mention with the goaltending now that the hysteria has died down. Um, I know that the organization thinks the highest of Kolosov, and that's fine. He's younger, they should, and they'll bring him along. With Fedotov, like I had said when he came over, I don't even know if he's an NHL backup. I don't at this point, and I still don't know. So if they're going to enter into a 2-year agreement with him, they're now taking a risk. Now it's not as big a risk if they understand that next year could be a real rebuilding year and they're going to lose some games, then it's fine. But don't sign him for too much and make sure it's a contract you can get out of because it's not a guarantee he's a backup for this league. I've seen
No.
nothing that tells me he's guaranteed to be a backup in this league. So that's something where they could just get somebody like anybody on a 1-year basis for the next couple of years to be the backup and see if Urson is a number one. And if he's not, then you have Kolosov in the waiting. Like that has to be the plan at this point.
Yeah, I worry a lot about these guys, having gone through this because I think that especially with Fedorov, and the lack of coverage defensively from the
Yeah.
skaters, because I think he was just like at his wits' end in terms of how to position himself
Yeah.
because he just didn't know what the defenders were going to do.
Right.
And I just, there's maybe one of those goals he could have gotten that was more of a breakaway, and that was just a choice of
Right.
coming out too far, I think. But that's something he can fix. I
Well,
just,
remember I talked about his breakaway percentage. Like some stats don't lie. And that was one
yeah.
where he's not really good at it. I mean, it's and if I'm finding a stat, it's available to NHL teams. So
Sure,
there
I
are
just
some
think
weaknesses.
that in an off season when you're getting coached for an NHL season versus a KHL season, I think that's something you can work on a little bit, but I do, yeah, I just worry about him from a confidence level more
Yeah.
than anything, but yeah, there's gonna be some hard questions this off season with goaltending and how to approach it next
It wasn't
season,
gonna
and
be like Alakazam. Yeah, you got 3 great goalies, don't worry about next year. It's not like that.
right, and, to have you want enough of a competition to motivate these guys, but not too much of a competition that
Right.
it destroys them all,
Right.
and I think that is gonna be a very fine line to tread for
I
this
agree.
team. Yeah. John Tortorella post-game, I think you could tell he was tired too,
Oh, yeah.
but, I think that, what he had to say and his demeanor is really the most important, like, looking at how he says things, is and he said, that right now what he just wants to do is get these guys to be pros, get their dignity back, play the right way, and finish out the season just feeling better about themselves than this streak of losses has done. And it's just like I truly believe he feels for these guys in a way
Well, he
that he
does
just
feel for
doesn't
him,
want
but I
them
don't
to
think
go
he
out on a bad note.
okay, yeah. I think he feels for him. I don't think
Yeah.
he feels like he is accelerated this pace though.
No.
And that's
No.
the problem. It's like you could say all those things, but how is the result going to be any different really than I mean, you're talking about games you're giving up 6 goals and 9 goals. Like you're not talking about games you're losing 2-1 and you could say, oh, we were out goalied or out chanced. At least they're past that. But you know what I mean? It's like all you could say is, for me, this is me, the better thing to say would be, hey, listen, right now we're in a tough spot. There's going to be chances for a lot of players here to prove something down the stretch. And let's just, try and go out on a high note rather than on a losing streak. And then people would say, okay, it looks like he's gonna, play some more of the youngsters and gonna juggle the based on what he said, I don't feel that way. And so,
Right.
are you gonna hold on to your mathematical chance until you're eliminated, and then just say, oh well. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
don't think he thinks that though. Uh,
I don't know.
that
I mean, based on the
that's
lineup
really
he's
not what he's
putting out
saying
there.
though.
Okay, I have to say, based on the lineup he's putting out there, though, it makes me think he does think that like that, because otherwise, if he knew it was truly over, he wouldn't be playing some of these guys. Like, he just wouldn't. There would be no reason to. But because there's a mathematical chance, I feel like that's why he's doing it. And he just doesn't want to be honest about that.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine there. I
Yeah.
just think that based on his demeanor and the words put together, it seems like he kind of knows now that it's over and he just wants these guys to win some games going out the door for the season.
But which
But
guys? Like, does Cam Atkinson need to win games? No, he's a big boy. He understands. He got his chance this year. He doesn't need to play anymore, does he?
no, that is true. That is true. Well, as we know, based on the results of that game in Montreal, plus everything else that went on, the Flyers are now in the fifth position in the wild card. It's just it's rough. The other teams all have a game in hand on the Flyers, and you have the Islanders who beat the Rangers. So they have 87 points. The Caps have 85 points. Pens and the Red Wings 84, Flyers with 83. So I think
And there's
it's
games in
great.
hand, like they have a game. The Caps have a game in hand, and
Right, that's what I said. That like
no, okay.
all the other teams above them have a game in
Oh, they
hand.
all do. Okay, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it is a almost impossibility, but not entirely
It's
impossible for the
impossible. Trust me.
Flyers to
Yeah,
make the well mathematically. I'm
I know.
saying.
I know.
But yeah, just a rough way to go out this season. We'll talk more about it and what it means for next season over the coming weeks, that's for sure. In the meantime, you've got some amazing mailbag questions and we will get to them coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. My favorite parts of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about those last minute flash deals. Plus, you get that all important view from your seat before you buy. You can save even more with zone deals where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat and all in pricing. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. Also, your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. The code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The first question from Randy was related to the game we just talked about. And, we talked about this a little bit, but he said that he was even more disappointed to see Johnson and Stahl in. Do you think Addard and Jennings give them a better or at least as good an opportunity to win? Which is an
Yeah,
aspect of it that we didn't talk about. We just talked about them getting ice
right.
time and experience. But does this actually help the Flyers now?
No, I think it does, because they don't have tired legs. They do have more effort. They might make a mistake or two more, but there's things they can do. But you got to use them the right way. If you got Addard in there, then you got to put them on power play too. If there's things you have to
Right.
do with them. You can't marginalize them anymore. You have to try and play to their strengths.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a key part of it, that you can use their strengths to your advantage in a game. And I think Jennings is underappreciated
Yeah,
as well. I
and
think for
remember,
his
he doesn't have to sign
defensive
here next
skill.
year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, just want to mention David, who sent us a really nice note, just giving us some compliments on the show. So thank you so much, David. In his email, he noted that the Canucks moved up from 22nd last year to top 5 this year with Rick Tocchet. So what's the difference in styles of coaching, and how has Tocchet managed the Canucks versus John Tortorella, the Flyers?
It's not a matter of coaching. It's just a matter of somebody just needed to steer the ship in Vancouver. They had Thatcher Demko. They had Quinn Hughes. They have uh, JT Miller. They have Brock Besser. They have Elias Pettersson. That is already more talent than the Flyers have. So that's why. He just needed to steer the ship correctly and let those guys play their best hockey, and they are. But it's not indicative of being able to have Torts make the jump. Torts doesn't have the talent to do it.
I think that's fair. I think, yeah, you can't really deny that list of players you just mentioned there. I think, there's a little bit to the coaching styles,
No,
but
there's a little bit because they hadn't done it before, but
right, right. I think the talent level there is definitely higher and had been underperforming
yes.
severely. Carl says it's time to switch gears. The Flyers are currently sitting at number 12 in the draft slot. You need Seattle to win out and might move up to 11. Is there a big difference in the draft between, say, like the 16th pick where we were a little bit ago to like 11 or 12?
Yeah, there's a difference. Like once you pop out of the top 10, it does go down a little bit. There's no way around that. And there is a difference when you're at 16. At that point at 16, you're probably not getting a top liner. You're definitely not getting a top pairing defenseman. You're not getting any of that. You're not getting any of that at 12 either. Like you might get lucky, somewhere between 11 and 20. Some team might get one player that breaks the odds that way, but they're not lined up like boom, boom, boom. These are all guaranteed guys. No. So in this draft, if you're looking for the top, you really kind of have to be in the top 10 for it. And then you might get that spillover at 11 where somebody makes a mistake, and then they're out there, but mostly no.
Right. And so it's probably unlikely that the Flyers move much more up than
Right.
maybe 11 in the draft
Yeah.
at this point. Mike wants to know, what do you tell the players about how to prepare for next season this offseason?
Well, that's a good question. That's sort of what we were getting into in this show. So, the exit has to be for guys that are returning. Hey, we have this culture, we have a standard, we want to play to that standard. To guys who are younger players, you have to tell them what your plans are for them. Hey, we have a bigger role for you next year. We know that maybe you didn't get enough of this, but this is coming next year. It's going to be there. Like those are the kinds of things the team has to be settled on when you give these exit interviews, especially to young players, so they have a real sense of they know what's going on and what their role is. If they leave not knowing that, like if Adam Yinning leaves and it's really up in the air to him, he might just go back to Sweden. He might just say, you know what? I enjoyed my time here. I didn't really get a chance to see it. And I know Flyers fans might say, who cares? He didn't do anything. You know what? You can't afford to lose guys like that. I'm sorry. There's right now they have a little bit of a talent gap on defense, and they've been trying to fill around the edges for a few years. And Sealer is about the most successful one other than Walker, and they got what they needed to do with Walker this year. So that's fine. But it's hard to find those guys. So
Right.
don't be pushing them out the door. So yeah, I think they have to be very open and honest.
Yeah, and Jennings would be inexpensive. That's the thing.
Right.
And room to improve, and it's been shown that he will improve based on
Right.
his track record.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a really good way to start. And yeah, I think it's about preparing for the long haul as
Yes.
well, because we saw what happened this year, and we have to have this team prepared to play a full season and have the mindset that maybe some people are going to get maintenance games out, and that's okay.
Right. Like don't sign any more Mark Stalls and say, oh, we're surprised he
No.
wanted to come here. And no, don't sign him. Don't promise anybody any playing time. Don't
No.
get any of these kinds of guys anymore. It's not going to help.
No, not at all.
You can get a
Uh
30-year-old veteran for 1 year, that's fine. I mean, I'm not against that, but I'm just saying, these other guys that are riding out the end of their careers, no.
Jason, wants to know, can the Flyers do Wayne Simmons proud and at least pick up that win versus the Devils on Saturday?
Yeah, without Jack Hughes, I think there's a chance, uh, but not with this effort that they've been showing, no. They actually have to ratchet it up because there's still enough players over there that wanna finish out with something decent. So, it's possible. I would give that one their best chance of winning in the next few games.
Right. I certainly hope they do. Maybe Simmons can come in and show them how to work net front, and
Yeah,
they'll get something
that'd be good if they
going.
hired him as a roving instructor. I mean, can't hurt.
Not at all. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Tomorrow we will be back looking at Flyers versus Rangers, more on how to finish out the season. Plus, we'll talk about Berkeley Catton of the WHL. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. If you've got questions you want us to answer on the show, you can send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ, I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league, like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the Free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.